industrialized nations that does not currently have a carbon dividend of some sort. And in 2023, the European Union is going to enact sanctions against U.S. products being imported to the into Europe if we do not have a carbon fee of some sort. So this proposal that I am asking you to do should help to further define, or this proposal that I'm dropping off, I apologize, should further define the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act by listing endorsements and providing examples of resolution. There's also, of course, a website, and my contact information is all here, so I'm asking you to please join us in supporting H.R. 2307. I only have one copy of this, but I believe there's a, like I said, a zip file of all this.
If you can provide that to the clerk, and she'll make sure we get copies.
And if anyone has any questions, still hold a moment. I'll entertain them. If not, I'll go sit down.
All right, well, listen, thank you for being here tonight.
Okay. Sorry I stumbled there.
That's okay, no problem.
As a volunteer.
Okay, turning to the agenda, the first item is the discussion on the local business forum. Mr. Allen, you're going to lead this conversation.
Yeah, Mayor, Council, you know, I don't know, I wish I had the exact date that we started. Months ago, we, Council tasked staff with setting up a public forum for the business group. We've been holding those meetings monthly for the last maybe 6 months or so. You know, the attendance has kind of dwindled down to 2 or 3. I think we've even had one at one of them. So I guess maybe further direction from council for staff on holding these meetings. I think there's a lot of staff hours that go into these, putting, you know, minutes together and whatnot, that maybe we consider either like a quarterly meeting, or I think we've set out, we've increased communication with the business group. We've added all of them to our email group. I think most of them are on code red text. We've done the shop VOT event with some of the business owners. So I think some of the things that we set out to do with this business forum has been successful. And I guess want council direction if it's needed to continue with a monthly meeting with that group.
I mean, Kyle, I know Kyle's on this group, leads this group as well. What do you think the meetings are happening too frequently? Do you think it's a matter, what do you think the reason is that we're not getting better participation?
I think initially when we looked at this, was towards the end of last year is when we started talking about doing it here locally. And when we actually had people call the businesses and say, hey, we want you to come participate, they came. And at that time, it was during COVID, it was like December or January time frame, and we were limited to the amount of people that we wanted to show up. So that was part of the kickoff, got some good feedback, we got the chamber involved. Chamber looked into and basically confirmed that what we were doing as a municipality was really, really strong in the way we were interacting with our local businesses. I think that there's a challenge that the businesses are busy. And so it's hard to identify or dedicate an employee to come and participate. I do think there is a desire to come and participate. It's just how do you get something rolling? And so, yeah, I don't think it's necessary. I'm not one to just create a meeting, just create a meeting. So I think at this time I would say no, we don't need it on a monthly basis. But I do still think that we should be very cognizant of kind of the local businesses and continue to try to find ways to support and encourage the businesses, community coming together.
I wouldn't disagree with that. Molly, Laura, you good?
I agree with all that.
Yeah, I agree. I think too, a lot of, at least the ones I attend, a lot of discussion was very like retail, food and beverage kind of driven, and there's so many businesses that aren't that. So I think that's part of the problem. A lot of those businesses that aren't, you know, under that category that we've talked about a lot, there's really no reason for them to come.
No, but I think they would want to support whatever it is that was going on.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But yeah, just some of the conversations were very driven to like a specific
Event.
group. Yeah, so could be part of the problem.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I think it's primarily like you said, it's primarily the retail and the restaurants and people that are open to the public and bringing people in every day.
And initially, that was the design because they were the ones that were most impacted.
Right.
And so it was.
And they're going to be impacted again by the closure of US 1. So I agree. I think the necessity for the forum is still, all the reasons why we should do it are still present. But I agree with you that probably the frequency doesn't need to be once a month, maybe it's once a quarter. And then when, as we get closer to the US 1 situation, perhaps we'll find, greater interest in meeting more frequently. But I think right now, if we do it once a quarter, you guys are doing a good job of communicating with them. I think that's probably the most important thing, is their awareness of what's taking place within the village and how things might impact them, so.
And that won't go away. We'll continue to do that. I
Right.
think what Mr. Stone said about, incorporating them into what we do. I mean, if we do a food truck event or whatever, trying to incorporate, keeping them involved, whatever we can do, we'll continue to do that.
Well, and if we put it in the position that we talked about last time too, with Parks and Rec, that would be a dual role to support the event planning and coordinate that with the business. I think that'll obviously be a positive step and a positive addition to what we're doing already, so.
I can even say just going to local businesses and handing out the envelopes from the shop local and kind of coaching them to say, hey, when someone spends over $10, let them know about this. And I think when I went to those businesses and did that, they were very appreciative of that. And I haven't hit all of them. I've hit
Right.
like 3. And so it's kind of like if we could have more of that ability, I think things would really start to.
Yeah, and this position would enable us to do that. So
Yeah.
are we in agreement that once a quarter is probably sufficient at this point? And that'll free up some of your staff time and,
I'm sure one of us or staff would feel if it needed to be more often, like if the bridge closes. It seems like there's a lot of local voices that are speaking up if there's a need for more. Don't worry about that.
Well, I mean, the other thing you can do is look at our vacancy, and I don't know that we have a lot of vacancies too right now. We got some, but
Could
no.
be that they're all doing okay right now. Just keep encouraging the shop local.
Mhm.
all right, so once a quarter, Jeremy, and continue all the other good things we're doing, and then when we get to the final budget discussions, we'll be looking at adding that one staff position, so. Okay, moving on to number 2, the selection process for the Charter Review Committee. Obviously, this is going to be an important element of some of the work we're going to be doing going forward. So, again, Mr. Allen, would you like to?
So you guys know the importance of reviewing the charter. We've had that discussion before. We'll have to I guess the council is asked to put together a charter review committee. So we've put together a few recommendations to have that conversation, and what the framework you guys want. After we put together the framework, we'll turn it over to Keith's office. They will put together the resolution, and we adopt that committee by resolution. But we just kind of need to set the framework, how many members you want, citizens, businesses, whatever you may consider for that. So you guys kind of have those recommendations in the staff report, open any conversation or how you guys want to proceed.
Okay. It's open for council discussion. Who would like to start? Molly, I'm going to look at
Okay.
you to start it.
The thing that I don't want to say concerned about, but crossed my mind first is, what's our backup plan? Like, what's the schedule of deliverables? When would we want this done by? But then what's the backup plan if we don't get enough applicants? Because I know we've struggled with some of the boards. I think there might still be some vacancy on some of the boards. So what's our backup plan too if we can't get because I agree, I think it needs to be 5 to 7 members for sure. So, would we write into the resolution what the backup plan is if we don't get enough applicants by this time frame to stay on schedule, or can only?
What if we ask for applicants, and if there isn't enough, then we, as a group, say, does anyone have someone they want to flat out ask and nominate? And see how many open ones we get first.
That was kind of my thought too, that let's
can do that, right?
open it up and,
Can you do that?
Yeah.
let's open it up, let's ask for applicants. And if we get hopefully more than 5, we'll get an opportunity to select. I agree they should be residents. I do think that, somebody from Keith's team needs to be participate in those discussions. Because I think for the committee to meet, and I know there's a suggestion that we allow the legal team to review minutes, but I think, again, if the committee goes off in the directions and spends a lot of energy and time on something that maybe the legal team could have said, hey, wait a minute, that's not in your purview, or that's not going to be productive, that hopefully makes the process more efficient. I do think there should be a staff liaison, again, not that the legal team or the staff person would lead or direct the conversations, but really be there as resource people. So if there's questions, procedural questions, or other issues that come up, and the committee needs to look at staff for an answer, then they're there to be able to provide those answers.
So question, the committee comes together and they start this process. Will they ever come in front of us to kind of give us that kind of
Yes.
a point where they're at and where we can talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, Molly's point, we could ask, again, we could set a time frame and say we'd like this to be, because again, we've got the referendum we have to go through, so there is a window here, but I don't think we need to drag this out longer than necessary. So maybe we say, we'd like this process completed within 4 months, and each month, if there's, again, I'm a little hesitant to micromanage it, but I do think we would have looked for the committee to give us some reporting out on their progress. And they're going to come to us with the recommendations, and obviously we will make a decision based on those recommendations.
And if there's something that is not recommended, does the council person, do I have the ability to add something and then we can talk about it?
Yes. I believe that's the case.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, this committee will do its job, review the charter, bring recommendations back to the council. The council will have the job of ultimately deciding what charter amendments to put before the voters in the referendum. And that has to be by ordinance. So you will adopt an ordinance ultimately that contains ballot language and summaries, depending on what the committee brings back to you and what you direct to go into the ordinance and move forward to the referendum. Some of the things that the council will have to decide and will have to work through is how many ballot questions do you want to have? How do you want to package that? And in terms of the time frame, to get this on the March 2023 ballot, I think you need to plan to have your ordinance adopted on second reading in November of 2022. So you've still got plenty of time, but
We'll be here.
yeah, you've got a year and a half really from now, which should be plenty of time to work through the issues of constituting the committee, and then even if that took you 6 months, you've got a year for them to do their work, bring you back recommendations, and for us to structure the ordinance and get the ballot and get it to the supervisor's office in time for the March 2023 election.
Yeah, I'd like to seek applications. I know there's a handful of people that I've thought of that I'm going to encourage, but.
Okay. So in providing direction, so we want to seek applications. That's number one. The fallback is if we don't have sufficient numbers of applications, then we can ask the council members to see if they can identify somebody to join that committee. We want to put a time frame for them to complete their work. I don't think it should drag out forever. I realize we've got a large window here, but I don't think we should let it drag out forever. So what do you think is a reasonable time frame? I mean, I mentioned 4 months, but
4 months from when they formed?
from when the committee's formed and is first constituted and they have their first meeting.
I mean, I don't know if I'd put anything on paper just yet, because it depends on their schedules too. I mean, I would hope that they can get together, but you never know how often they can get together.
And how long it takes to form the committee, because we have to do a resolution first. Is that the process to form the committee? So we have to go.
Yeah, and that's not difficult. It's really just going to be a resolution that creates the ad hoc committee. We'll need some direction, as the manager said, on ideal situation, how many members you want that committee to have, and that won't take any time at all to put together once we get the direction from you. And then you'll have to go through the process of hopefully reviewing a whole bunch of applications and deciding who will be the members of the committee.
So that could be a couple months, like if the resolution is on the next council meeting or it gets to the one following, and then applicants, and then I'm assuming they'd come here, the applicants, so that's a couple months process right there, so we
Yeah.
take that in
Well, and I
consideration.
think with summer too, people are gonna be coming in and out, they're gonna not be paying as much attention, so, yeah, I think if we could get a resolution put together and maybe target it for the August council meeting, and then start the process at that point in time. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay, and we're talking about 5 members on the basis. So Jeremy, we're giving you guidance here, obviously. So we're talking about five members. I would my personal feeling would be to let the committee select its own chairman, unless you guys feel otherwise.
I think I'm fine with that.
Okay, so we'd let the committee select its own chairperson. And do we want to give them any kind of a timeframe from the time they form to the time they complete their work? Because obviously it's going to come back to us, we've got to review it. As the vice mayor said, we might have some things we want to reference or bring up as well.
I think we have plenty of time.
Okay.
Historically, do you know how
Before the
long
end of the year.
this has taken before?
Well, I've done 2 charter review committees in the past, neither were here at the village, and both of those charters were, well, one, we actually restated the whole thing. We rewrote the entire document. The other was more of a review of an existing charter. I'd say, both took 9 to 12 months from the time the committee started its work until the ordinance was adopted, and it was moved forward to the ballot, so.
And we need.
And you've got, in my opinion, Tequesta's got a pretty robust charter. You've got a lot of things in your charter, which isn't to say they all have to be changed. I think you've got a good charter. It's always good to put fresh eyes on it and take a look as you're doing now. But we do have what I would call a robust document. It's not bare bones. I think it's got some things in there that are worthy of serious review and contemplation. So
So you
I
said
think
for
a
us-
year.
So you said for council to have it ready for November next year.
You need to have the
2022.
ordinance adopted by your November 2022 council
So
meeting.
that would be your second, that would be your second
So I mean,
reading.
August gives a buffer then of a month, one meeting, so.
Well, so you have your
But then,
second,
like, July.
you'd have your second reading in November, your first reading in October.
Right.
So,
Of 2022.
Yeah.
To get it on 2022.
yeah.
So
All right,
yeah,
you just
July
wanna
or
leave the time-
The
August.
sooner the
maybe.
better, but I'd say we gotta form it first.
Is it necessary to have a time frame?
It's not absolutely necessary. I mean, Molly mentioned it, and I think providing some parameters just so people
Yeah.
have a sense of
I
when we
think them
expect the
hearing
output.
that would help, so they understand there is a time-sensitive matter on it.
You guys had one for the audit committee, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that's just really helpful to keep everyone on task.
Yeah, the audit committee was because of the contract was coming up. Yeah, same concept.
Deadline, right?
Yep, it is done. So I think I have to have it done before August.
Well, why don't we leave the timeframe open, because once we get the resolution, if we give some more thought to a timeframe around it, we can always, amend the resolution at that time if we want to add a timeframe at that point. But I think the other pieces we've kind of pretty well laid out.
I would say I'm okay with the time frame as long as it's 6 months.
Okay.
Once the committee's formed.
Yep.
Right, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Bradford?
This has nothing to do with the subject matter. With the exception of the mayor and the village attorney, I think all of you need to bring your microphones closer to you because we're having a hard time hearing you.
Okay.
I just wanted you to know.
All right, thank you, Tom.
I'm usually the one getting,
I don't even know if it's on.
get closer to the mic, so.
Jeremy, do you need any more from us at this point, or are we clear?
Keith, do you need anything else for the resolution? Doesn't sound like it. Sounds like what they gave us.
Is 5 members, they're gonna appoint their own officers?
Minimum 5.
Minimum of 5?
maximum of 7.
Maximum of,
Yeah, I
I
would
would say
strive
seven.
for more than 5, because you're bound to have people miss one, and we'll go through the holidays, and, I
You
mean.
know, I can put that resolution together, and then we will insert blanks for the names to be put in once the council has selected its members, and then that'll be ready to roll.
Okay,
You said you wanted that for your August?
let's do it for August.
Not a problem.
Yeah.
We'll leave off the max, so that way we'll give you some flexibility not to turn people away if you guys decide 6 or 7
Yeah.
or 8 is good.
Just don't want to get too large, because then that can
Well, that'll
become,
be your guys'
Yeah.
decision later, so.
If you want to make it difficult.
yeah.
15.
Yeah. Okay.
But just to be
Yes.
clear, the staff's going to go ahead and put out like a request out to the village.
Yep,
Okay.
application.
Right. Once we approve everything.
Right, we'll have to do the.
Yeah, once the resolution's, written, passed, approved, then we'll request. Okay. All right.
Comment card.
Oh, we do on this item?
We do.
Okay.
Pat Watkins.
Good evening, Pat.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Pat Watkins, 167 River Drive. Very briefly, I just want to encourage you all to have the village attorney as part of this committee, because the questions are going to come up, they will come up. If you're not part of I'm sorry, Keith, but if he's not part of the committee, it's going to be phone calls back and forth afterward anyway, so you may as well do that. I think it's really important to have him there. And when you're putting out your information to the public, however you're going to get it out there for your names, please don't paint a charter review as negative. It is not negative at all. It's something the charter needs to be reviewed. That's part of a process. It's a good process. I don't think our charter is in serious need of revamping, but it is always a good idea to take a look. Okay, thank you.
Those are good suggestions, and I think, again, we would want the village attorney to be, again, available and participating. And we, again, as I mentioned, I'd like to see a staff member. Maybe it's the clerk, maybe it's the village manager. Again, not to direct the committee, not to insert their ideas, but simply to provide guideposts. So, and be a resource to the committee.
Can I ask one more question? Keith,
Sure.
would this be an opportunity to not have you on that committee, but have another municipal attorney on there just as a separation? Or is there, would that be any value in doing that, or does that cause?
I want to say that was what happened the last time the village did a charter review, which predates my firm's involvement with the village, but if I recall, you had the town of Jupiter's attorney on that committee. I could be wrong, but somebody could probably verify that or not. So.
Would that create complexity, or just, I would think that it might just create a separation and keep it cleaner.
I think the difference is if you want that person to be on the committee, or if you want
Advisory.
someone not on the committee, but who's there to offer, some legal guidance. I think if it's the latter, that should probably be the village attorney. If you want someone who's to be on the committee, I think it should not be me.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking it's the latter.
More on the advisory?
Yeah.
I was understanding that it's a staff member, whether it's the manager, the clerk, and the attorney, basically sitting in the back of the room.
Yes.
And if the
As a
committee comes up to a serious question of legalities of how things would work out, they could just turn and say, what is the legalities of that? But it's not them being on the committee.
Agreed. They would be a
Okay.
resource to the committee, but not actually
Kind
on
of
the
just
committee
skip,
itself.
as
Yes.
Ms. Watkins said, the back and forth phone
Yep.
calls and emails, and we can maybe help the committee
Yeah.
move along a little bit.
Exactly.
I'm fine with either. I just
Okay.
wanted to
We're all
throw that
comfortable
out
with
there.
And I suppose those aren't mutually exclusive
Yeah.
ideas either.
Yep.
So that just depends on whether you want an attorney with local government experience to be on the committee. You might have to open that up to someone who's not a village resident.
Right.
So, I don't know, but
I think our residents are very capable.
Yep, I do too. Okay, item number 3, another committee selection process. This is the Corridor Steering Committee. Mr. Allen.
Similar process, I think we recommended a 7 to 9 member committee for this. However, I think maybe even more might be appropriate, just depending on the interest. I think the different opinions that is probably better in the situation. So So I have outlined some recommendations for council. Council can choose to, what you guys think is appropriate. We do the same thing where we pass a resolution establishing the steering committee. Yeah, so, and I mean, same thing, if you want to appoint the chair, if you want a staff member, if you want the village attorney, the same conversations, I think.
And this is to move forward with a kind of request of proposal of some sort for the charrette, finding out the contractor, because you sent that email about the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council and how they might be able to help.
All right, so I think this is separate from that. Either whether we go with a firm through the RFQ process, or when we come back maybe in August and we have the Treasure Coast Planning Council kind of present a proposal. Either way, you're gonna need a steering committee, so this is starting that process to get applicants for that committee. So either, no matter how we do it through the RFQ or the Treasure Coast Planning Council, we're gonna need a committee for that.
Okay. But we're pausing for the request for proposal until we kind of get more.
Yeah, so in August, I know the last marching orders put out a request for qualifications, have spoke with Treasure Coast Planning Council. I'd like to see council's comments for that first before we put out a request for or proposal for that. So the next process, we have them come in or have that conversation at a workshop. It's not on the agenda tonight, but have that conversation before we put out the request for qualifications. We have put that document together. It is ready. So we're just kind of on standby until we have that conversation.
Obviously, NILSA gave us a presentation, obviously, for this purpose, and the decision was to open it up to potentially other parties as well. Why would we defer putting that forward? Because again, I don't want to slow this process down too much, because again, developers are going to move forward with or without us. So I'd like to make sure we try to keep pace with what's potentially out there. I mean, we already have the Mastriani building that we know is probably going to come back to us. So what would be the reason to not go forward with the RFQ while we wait for Treasure Coast Planning? I mean, they're a great organization. They helped us with the US 1 project. I have a lot of respect for them, but I don't know why the two things can't happen concurrently.
Because if you put it out for qualifications, they won't submit for it. They don't do that. They won't go against private organizations. We can do an interlocal agreement with them. They're like a state organization, so it's one or the other. We would be saving probably quite a bit of money going with Treasure Coast Planning Council. So I just want to provide that option for you before we go the other route, because once we put out that request for qualifications,
they would not be willing to come in and propose as an
Treasure Coast will not
alternative.
participate in a procurement process. They'll do an interlocal agreement, but they will not participate in the proposal process.
No, I understand that, but if we say, here's the proposal process, that's one thing. Treasure Coast Planning offers us a second alternative. Those two things can't run concurrently?
They won't.
Okay, they won't.
Once we put it out, the Treasure Coast Planning Council says they won't be a part of the process. They wish us luck, maybe, offer some words of encouragement, but they won't be a part. So the only reason why I bring that up is it's an opportunity to at least have that discussion, to possibly save some money, and have a good resource with the Treasure Coast Planning Council. And if at the end of the day, if you guys want to proceed forward, that's fine. I mean, I have no, that was just an option I wanted to bring forward.
Do you know if we can, as a council, hire them as our consultant throughout that process and then do a request for proposal, or is that?
First, if they would even do it.
I'm not sure if that's slicing it too thin.
I don't know if that's their role.
Yeah. That would not be a typical relationship.
Okay.
So so you're saying you'd have Treasure Coast Planning come in August?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't talked to them, set a date yet, but as long as they're available, they'll come in. I can imagine they will.
So we would need to make a fairly quick decision then, because again, if we don't want to delay this other part too long, they're coming in August. Now we're already looking at, if we want to go out to an RFQ after they present and we make a determination, we're saying the earliest we would get it out is August.
Right.
And that's just for them to do a presentation.
Right.
Gotcha.
All right,
Do you have
let's-
any idea what the cost is compared to what we're looking at?
I mean, we don't even know the cost of a regular RFQ until we put it out. I mean, so.
Well, I mean, we have NILS's cost.
Well, we
though.
have NILS's
What I'm
as a-
saying,
as
yeah,
a
I mean, do we
benchmark, but
know
yeah.
that Treasure Coast is gonna save money?
He says that's the reason why they don't bid on it, is because their price structure is so much under what a private organization does. Now, I don't know what that means to us, but he says they're pretty successful at that. So, I mean, he's out on vacation now, but I mean, I told him I would send him the scope of work, and he would start to formulate kind of a price and a cost breakdown for us.
Okay. What are your thoughts? What's everybody's thoughts on this?
Thinking.
I mean, I'm not against the RFQ. It was kind of the route I was going on. I'm not against not listening to Treasure Coast. I don't know anything about them, essentially.
I mean, I'd like to see what Treasure Coast has to offer, because they did a great job for the village.
That's what they do.
When we did US 1, but it's just, I guess it's disappointing that it's going to extend the time frame a couple of months to go that route, but
I think if you want to do
it's
it
probably
right.
worth it.
Yeah.
It's probably worth it to make sure we're getting the very best services at the best cost to the village.
I mean, if you guys are open to it, I can try to get him in before, I don't know my dates, the next workshop, and we can try to plan like a mid-month workshop just to get them in if they're amenable to it and you guys are as well.
As long as it's by July 16th. Because I leave on the 17th.
Me too.
I'm out the end of July and August.
Anybody
Well,
left?
you know,
But I can.
well, you know, while we're talking, since we're talking about this, I had mentioned to Jeremy, I'm not going to, well, no, that was the August workshop. I would be back in time for July, or for the August-September workshop. Is everybody going to actually be here for the
No.
workshop in July,
I missed that
or
one.
beginning of August? How many other people are going to be gone?
I'll be
But
here.
I have a plan to possibly zoom in,
Okay.
if
Are
I can
you-
find internet.
Teleport.
Are you here? You're here. Molly, you here? All right, I'll be here for that one.
So,
Okay.
back to the order at hand, the committee, do you guys want to wait off on the committee then too? Or, I mean, I don't see why we can't go ahead and start taking applications for it, set the resolution and go ahead and work on that and try to expedite the process as much as we can.
I think moving forward with the resolution, and obviously it's got to come to the council, but
And I might need a little more education. I'm a little less clear on the role of this committee. We've been talking up until this evening about putting out procurement, and so I didn't know if this committee, if that's the route we go, would be involved with reviewing and ranking proposals and bringing back a recommendation, and if either way, is there additional responsibilities that this committee is going to have in working with the ultimate successful entity that does the thing and that gets the job? Are they going to be kind of working with them in terms of visioning?
no, that's a great question, and it actually begs something else too, because we're talking about Treasure Coast Planning coming back and presenting to the council and having the council make a determination whether they want to go that direction or not. The committee's role, it would be with the RFQ process. So if we go the RFQ route and we select a private entity, then they would be the ones that, like the audit committee, they would be going through, evaluating everybody and making a recommendation back to the council. So you got two different pathways we're running on. Mr. Bradford?
A couple of things, and my thoughts aren't crystallized yet, but first of all, back in the first charrette that I ever took place in was in September of 1989 in Tequesta, and we hired Dover Cole out of Miami, and the University of Miami students were involved, as well as Treasure Coast, to help us do it all. And they did a great job. And then we, at the town of Palm Beach, hired Treasure Coast to do a charrette for the Royal Poinciana, excuse me, was it Royal? Yeah, Royal Poinciana Way Historic District, and they did an excellent job there as well. So that was, I just wanted to share that with you. The next thing is in regard to a steering committee, and I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts with you. The current nomenclature for this committee is referred to as a host committee and not a steering committee, because historically what's happened is a lot of steering committees actually think they have more power than they really do. So host has been the current term used most often. And really all they do is make sure that the process is functioning properly, you know, in terms of air conditioning, water, snacks, papers, drawings, video, whatever the case may be. That's really their only role. And then my last thought was this: if you create a formal committee, regardless of what the name is, I don't think you want these people to be subject to the Sunshine Law. They're really just helping, you know, the machinations and the logistics of an event to take place. And some of these people might be, you know, very knowledgeable in this sort of thing, which attracted them to being on the committee in the first place. And I don't have an answer, but I would hate to see important key people end up there and then they can't even talk to their fellow committee members because of Sunshine. So I don't really have it formulated, but I was just worried about that issue and just wanted to share it with you.
Well, and you actually bring up another element, which is when we talked about putting this committee together, it was for the express purpose, like the audit committee, of making a determination of who, if we go private, who we would want to utilize. Like the audit committee, once its work was done, the recommendation was made and the council acted, that committee was disbanded. I think the initial thought was we were going to follow the same process here. So it wasn't going to continue past the selection process of whoever it was, and then they would handle everything else from that point forward.
That would free up the Sunshine.
Yeah. So.
Well, I was just looking at sorry to interrupt, on Nilsa's proposal that we looked at in the last workshop, she did have, I think that's where it came from too, she had a steering committee involved the whole time, so maybe that's where, I think that's where it came up with to begin with.
That was a committee that she was going to put together.
Okay.
Whoever orchestrates
So this one's
this
totally
process.
separate from that one.
Yeah, they would put together that committee that would provide that guidance and oversight. As part of, that would be part of the work that they'd be responsible for. And Treasure Coast would do the same thing. I mean, that was our experience with US 1, they did the same thing.
So I put this
So where do we want to go from
selection
here?
committee on pause until we hear it from Treasure Coast and find out what direction we want to go.
You make a good point, Molly. If Nielsa, for example, had her own steering committee, if we were to find someone else to do it, they might put their own committee together.
Well, they're going to.
So,
Yeah, they would.
So why are we putting one together?
Well, no, we were, it's really a selection committee. It's
Like the audit, I understand the audit, I
Yeah.
thought that's
That's
what I was
really what
going
we're
with.
That's really what we're talking
But
about.
now we're talking about a group staying the whole time, and I'm getting.
No,
a little
no, we're
lost.
not.
Okay.
No.
I took it as what we do with the audit committee, and they go through and
Yes.
they make
Yep.
their recommendation.
If we don't select Treasure Coast, we're going to want to select a committee.
And then they would
Gotcha.
come, you know, they would go through that process, come to us with a recommendation. We would then make a determination, and then that committee would disband. Not that they couldn't then participate.
No, I know what you're saying,
in
it's
the
like the audit
process,
committee.
but yeah.
Gotcha.
I agree. I think there's no point going forward with it until we hear from Treasure Coast. But Jeremy, I'd be ready to go. You said you already have done some work on this. I'd be ready to go. Because if we say either no to Treasure Coast, then we're going to want to move on this quickly.
Yeah. Well, you guys already authorized me to send out the RFQ, so if, you know, we decide not to go with Treasure Coast, it'll be ready to ship out the
Okay.
next day.
All right, sounds good. All right. Number 4, strategic plan update.
So-
Mr. Allen, that's you again.
Per council's direction to provide kind of a quarterly update on the strategic plan, I've provided, I guess, some notes or updates in this, presentation. It might be easier if there's just questions or on specific items instead of, I mean, if you want to go through all of them, we can. But if you have questions, we can do that. I provided an update on the items. I think we've pretty much either started working on most of them, have some good traction. So if there's questions, you know, I can provide some updates, additional updates if you need.
Are we gonna make grant funding or matching part of our budget? Is there gonna be a budget item for funds for matching for grants?
Currently, we don't have that planned. If the council chooses, at the council's pleasure, we can. I mean, we obviously very strapped budget-wise, I mean, so to put some money toward that, but if the council's will, then we will.
Have you had a chance to look into Florida League of Cities' new grant program or grant service that they just rolled out?
We do, and I've met with one of our grant writers looking at some of those grants already. Very positive, had a training for it. I mean, there's hundreds of grants in there, and so there's no cost to the village as long as we keep it under our 2 users. But as we divvy it out to the department heads, then it's like $250 a user. But there's a lot of grants in there, and so our particular grant writer will seek out those grants for us. So for her, it's a great tool that she has resources to look, as opposed to just getting and Google searching. I mean, these are all legit government grants that are specifically for local governments or state entities. So
Okay, but so we would still need our grant writer. It doesn't replace that.
it would be
That
important to
service.
have
It's just more of
that.
a
Could we do it
resource.
without it? Yes, but I mean, department heads writing those grants, it puts a time constraint on that.
All right, no, but so the Florida League of City thing was just more of a resource, though. They weren't providing any service per se. It was just
No.
resource.
I mean, they
Okay.
have resources as far as if we have questions or how the process works, but actually writing the grants, they don't have that
Okay.
resource for us.
So Jeremy, in the manager's report, you mentioned a block grant that could be used for roads. Now, is that, I'm assuming, is that a match or a non-match, or what's the story?
It's not a
behind that?
match. It's similar to the grant you talked about with Paradise Park, is that, you know, you can get more points if you put more money
contribute
into
something.
it, but it's not gonna be a requirement.
Okay. Yeah, in referencing that, you sounded somewhat optimistic with respect to the opportunity, so.
Kimley Horn's gonna help us with that. They're very optimistic. I know we've had a couple meetings with them, just looking at the scope. They're very optimistic because they know the state has quite a bit of money out there right now, and so we're hopeful, and they feel good about it, probably better than I do, but I'm one of those, I don't like to cash grants before we get them, but.
No, we definitely don't want to do that.
I do think we should make grants a priority, and I would like to see it in the budget, knowing that we might use it all pretty quickly, but at least get in the habit of budgeting, matching it.
There's no question grants are a priority, and that's obviously something we've pushed on over the last couple of years. I guess the issue there, Jeremy, is, you know, we're going to try and pursue things that are non-matching, obviously, but there may be situations where we feel better if we do match something. I don't know, like you said, you don't have a lot of wiggle room in the budget right now, so I don't know where you'd pull back to create a matching pool at this point. You'd have to give that some thought and see if it's possible at this point.
I will take a look at it.
Okay. Since we're talking about this, though, I did want to share something with the council and the manager. I did have a chance to meet with John Snyder last week. We had a really good meeting. I emphasized to him it was a two-way street, so the first thing I did is asked him what his needs were, and what his concerns were, and where we could be as support. And he brought up the environmental situation, you know, with the toxic blooms and all the rest. And I happened to mention Mr. Bradford. We had a very active EAC, and I mentioned to him some of the steps we had taken, which he was very happy to hear. He also asked us if we could find some space for him to have an office once a week locally in Tequesta. Jeremy and I have talked about that. I'm not sure we do have any space available, unfortunately, but I told him we'd at least look into it.
Private space or public space?
They just need, they were hoping to locate it within the municipal complex somewhere.
Okay.
But I think we don't have a lot, you know, we're kind of busting at the seams here. So, and I told him that. I said, we'd look into it, but I said, I really don't know whether we'd be able to accommodate him or not. On the good news, though, is we did talk about grants, and I did ask him, I said, when and where it's desirable and would be helpful for you and Senator Powell to write letters of endorsement supporting any grant applications we make, are you willing to do so? He said, absolutely yes. So as we go through this process, Jeremy, if there's situations where that would help, he's on board. The other thing, we did talk about annexation, so we're going to have some further conversations on that. We did talk about an earmark for Tequesta Park as well. We talked about the park, the size of the park, the kind of capital investment that would be needed. He said, you know, oftentimes with earmarks, they're looking for some kind of a match, and I said, well, in terms of the capital investment, I said, we're not really going to be in a position to match that in any meaningful way. I said, however, we are maintaining it, and we have put some dollars into it. And so we talked about that, and he said, well, if you're maintaining it for the next 30 years, that's your match. Now, you know, he's a new representative. Senator Powell obviously is in a much stronger position, and he and I have yet to meet. But he did say that, you know, the legislative committee get together back starting in September. So in September, we will meet. Jeremy will include Jeremy in these discussions as well. And he is going to put forth a request for an earmark for Tequesta Park. He asked me how much we wanted, and I said $8 million. So we'll see what happens. But the original plans that were developed to build out that park, I think, was it Mayor Watkins? I think this was during your tenure, right at the end of it. It was about 9, 10 years ago, and the price tag at that time was oh, okay. Yeah, the price tag at that point was about $6.5 million. So I inflated it a bit. We'll see. You know, it's nothing's guaranteed, but he's willing to go to bat for us on it. So we'll see what happens. So I just wanted to add that since we're talking about strategic plans.
That's on obviously the state side, but what about the county side? And talking to the different Martin County and Palm Beach County, I think everyone someone has a role to offer this community in this area. You know, there's 15,000 people in 33469 roughly.
Yeah.
And it makes up Martin County, Palm Beach County, Tequesta, and Jupiter.
Well, he's open to starting some conversations with the Martin County side. The Palm Beach side, obviously, is Senator Powell, and it crosses over for John as well. But you know, and he understands the uniqueness of the situation where it's state-owned land, we lease it, but we don't own it, and in 30 years, the state could take it back. So I said, it doesn't, you know, as in our circumstances, we can't afford to make that kind of a capital investment. And he understands it, and he said it is very unique. I said, obviously, lots of people are asking for earmarks. They do all the time. I said, but this is, I think, probably different than most, and he concurred with that. So I guess we'll see.
I see it as an issue of the way government was drawn up line-wise, and it's unfortunate it was done that way, and we need everyone to come together to fix it.
I don't disagree, and I know Mr. Bradford sent us something a while back where, you know, we were talking about the fact that Florida is one of the few places where municipalities can't cross county lines, but he sent us an example of a situation where an accommodation was made in that regard, and I brought that up as well. And again, I can't say at this point how far we'll get with it, but at least, you know, the conversation started with him, and I'll get it started with Senator Powell as well. So I just wanted to bring you guys completely up to speed. So, but he was very magnanimous. He has a great attitude for whatever that's worth, and we'll see where it goes. Any other on the strategic plan?
I had a couple.
I know Molly, that was something you were very interested in getting the update. So do you have some questions or issues you want to touch on?
Couple comments.
Figured you would.
Not too many, I promise. On the increased communication and transparency, I just want to keep stressing, I think it's important to communicate just a very high-level summary of village initiatives. I know, I think it's been great. Staff and EAC has been helping put out some information to the public on stuff that's been passed, but I just want to kind of continue to hone in on that and make it a little, you know, maybe a little less wordy, high level, so people, you know, take the time to read it and know what's going on. That's just.
And I would just add, I agree with you. I think, but you can post things more than once.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just keep posting.
I think sometimes you have to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then I know you guys talked about a town hall. Is that something that it's been considered to do in the rec center when it's done? Like a town hall?
So the town hall meeting, I think Mr. Stone was originally brought this up. I mean, at least when I was here, he brought this up, I think it was pre-COVID, about doing like a town hall meeting just outside of the council chambers. And at the time, the council was very supportive of that. And then, of course, kind of COVID hit, and we kind of didn't revisit that for a while. I think it's something we could revisit. I think the new community center being open will really help us, because we were talking about trying to do it at the other old rec center, and you know how we would accommodate those. But I think there'll be some better opportunities for accommodation with the new rec center. So I think that's probably where it's at. Mayor Stone
Yeah,
can.
the idea was to have like a food truck event, but also do like a workshop meeting at the location, so that people can come and we can hear comments, we can hear more participation.
Yeah, like that.
We like the people that show up, we really do. But
Well, we
it's
could,
good.
you could even leverage that and do maybe a state of the town type
Yeah.
thing, where once a
Exactly.
year,
Yeah.
get everybody together along those lines and invite everybody in, and you're right, the community center would be a perfect
Has fans
venue
to do
for
hot
that.
dogs?
Yeah.
I was just understanding that we didn't jump to it because we had some logistical issues with technology, and obviously if we have a new rec center, that could be implemented ahead of time.
So we have a PA system now that records, so as
Right.
long as somebody's talking to the mic. So at the time, we didn't have that when we first started out with that, because that was one of the constraints, is to make sure that the meetings are recorded and, you know, done properly. But I think we're a little ahead on the technology side, but just with COVID, we stepped back on that one. But we can bring that back. I mean, that was the idea behind it.
I like it, yeah.
It's a good idea.
Sorry, I have a couple more.
Keep going, keep going.
Sorry. On the alternative transportation, I know Mr. Bradford and the EAC have presented a lot of information on the microtransit. If it's something that ends up we have to pay for, is that something we're even gonna consider? Because we would have to budget for it next year if we, right, or no? 'Cause-
Right, so we missed the deadline this year. There was a deadline, I want to say it was June 10th, but I'd have to go back and look at it. When we did reach out to them, we saw that it was past the deadline. I know the original conversation, you know, obviously council hasn't really weighed in on that yet, but the original, I guess, thought was, let's try to get 100%. There is some stipulations in that grant that will allow for 100% instead of 50%. So that was the original kind of thought, you know. And then of course, if there is a financial impact to the village, we'd have to bring that back for council approval. So I guess the short answer to that is we're going to try for 100%. If we want to budget for that, we can. There's still a lot of unknowns and, you know, cost and, you know, all that goes with it. So
I will say that the EAC is very aware of our tight budget. So anything that comes back with costs from the village, they are very cautious of that.
the conversation's gonna have to come to council when we start talking about the financial impact. Is that that value gonna be associated with that cost? Is it gonna, which one is gonna be, are we gonna get enough bang for a buck out of a program like that? And so that'll be a council discussion and decision, so.
So I know road improvements they're supposed to start in August, right? But when does the bridge closure start next year? I can't remember.
But,
That was March. Was it March?
Well,
March of
before they,
23, I think.
yeah, before they close, they said they're gonna do the intersection work down at Old Dixie, A1A and US 1.
Yeah, I think that was all slated, like all the road improvements were,
Supposed to be
intersection
done
improvements were
first.
supposed to start in August, right?
Yeah.
This August?
Yes, I
That was
think
the last
all-
update.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it was August.
So then when does the actual bridge close again?
So I think he's
Early
right.
23, like spring of 23.
Okay.
We gotta finish the.
I'm gonna
bridge
say
altar.
spring, just to give me a couple months of missing.
So we have a little time to prepare for that, but we'll be honest before we know it.
Okay, just two more things, I promise. On the COVID-19 and US 1 bridge impacts, that item, it just talks about businesses, but I want to remember we need to be thinking about the residents too, and communications for them, not just the businesses, especially for the bridge. And then on the reduced carbon footprint, just curious if you guys have any other ideas. And, you know, I know the water department's going through their process with finding energy efficiencies, and does that kind of, I know you have that in another section, but that possibly could go towards carbon footprint, so kind of, I don't know if you look at it on that standpoint too.
I mean, the only couple things that I know we've looked at, and I don't know if it really fits in that category, we've looked at like the lighting in the village buildings. We had somebody come out and do like an analysis for us, and I'd have to go back and revisit that, but at the time Doug didn't, I think Doug gave me a recommendation that they gave us that there wouldn't be a cost benefit the cost benefit analysis wasn't there for us. But if we just wanna, if it's not about money, we just wanna, change all of our fixtures over to LED and do that, but it was gonna be pretty costly. And so we didn't end up going that route. As far as the charging stations, we do have charging stations planned for the recreation center. The other charging stations, and I visited with FP&L a second time, they're not willing to, upgrade our charging stations to fast charging stations. So now you're looking at 7 or 8 hour, charging stations, and it doesn't seem to be what we need out of a situation like that. So those are the two things that I know of, other than the water plant, that we looked at, some energy savings or carbon footprint. I'm open to other ideas or suggestions if you have any.
Okay, that's all I had.
So-
Curious on, thanks.
Okay. Or anything else on this topic?
No, sir.
I'm good.
We're good? All right. Moving on to number 5, discussion on Tequesta Fest. I actually asked Jeremy to put this on. We talked to Greg about trying to maybe reimagine what Tequesta Fest might look like, maybe get some additional feedback as to this, this people's, the strength of the resident interest in this event. I'm just going to open it up, and we've all had a chance to think about it a little bit since the last meeting, and to see what everybody thinks. And Lori, I'll start with you.
I could see it being reimagined. I don't know if that'd be doable for this year, because we're coming up on it, and if we were to change it up completely, I think it would definitely need some time to involve the community for the vision that I see it could be going in. If you involve the community coming in, more vendors, more hands-on essentially, less rides, no rides, but less rides. And there was an email or something that they were looking at, maybe an update on the estimation on ride costs.
We are working on it.
Yeah.
Greg's working on.
So I'd like to see that.
So just since that Thursday or that Wednesday, the next day, Greg and I talked about, talking with the vendor, what it would cost if the vendor's there to do like a Friday night, Saturday, just try to get a better bang for our buck out of the situation. Maybe we do Friday night would just be residents only, and then Saturday be what we do with Tequesta Fest, and maybe we charge non-residents a little bit more on Saturday to help offset some of those costs and ultimately be able to get more bang for our buck. So Greg is working on that, like some cost proposals, just so the idea is that if we're gonna do it, let's do it right. Let's, do it the way that we do, events here, not minimize the event. So Greg and I have had those conversations. I haven't got an update from him. That was last Thursday, so.
But for this year, we could welcome vendors, not food vendors, but businesses to come in and have a spot.
We'll
Look
have
at the grass.
we'll have to check on that, because, depending on, like, if you're talking about food vendors, then probably, maybe not. If you're talking about some, retail spaces, maybe. So we'll just have to check, and then we'll have to see if there's interest in that.
Maybe just, if it is allowed, with the partnership with the ride guy, help offset some of the costs for this year.
Yeah.
Invite more people in.
Why not food vendors?
I was told it's kind of a competition between the carnival food.
The carnival's they make money off the food,
their
so,
food.
so
Yeah,
I
they're
can't
bringing
imagine
food
them
vendor.
being happy
Yeah.
with us bringing food.
But we
vendors
have
in.
lots of other non-food, and even if there were sort of local Jupiter businesses that are right on our line, invite them to come in, charge them a small fee to come in, and they're getting a ton of exposure. We do welcome outside Tequesta residents to the event, so they're getting a lot for their exposure.
If you actually go back a few years, we used to bring in other vendors. So we've done that in the
The
past.
first year I ever went, there was a masseuse, and she was doing 5 to 10 minute chair massages. And that was the best thing ever.
That's like a ride in itself.
And it was like $10, it was like $1 a minute, it was something really affordable, and it was just awesome. And my husband and I would trade off. So I got mine, and then I took the kids, and then he came, and then he got his, and just something unique, and something you don't see like that in a lot of other places. I think it also, you're bringing in that small business, because we all know that was a privately owned business. Something unique, we could
Yeah.
twist it around a little bit.
I would be less supportive of commercializing the event in that aspect, but more of a fair-like atmosphere.
Some more carnival.
Farm, pigs and stuff.
See, that's what I
We've done that
envision
too.
for the
We've done that
future.
in the
Yeah,
past.
I think that, I mean, that's, to me, that's what I think Mr. Prince was talking about with that special,
Mhm.
unique, small-town experience.
That's
during
kind of how I
Carnival.
see it for the, if we have to revamp it and redesign it essentially, I see it being like that, inviting community aspects, whether it's you're baking pies and you bring animals and you make it, I agree, like totally more carnival farm-like. I just don't know with the time crunch for this year, what that would look like. If that's too much of a rush, what's the cost and all that? Before you know it will be the holidays.
I think there is some time, which is why I wanted to kind of bring it back to the agenda tonight to make sure we do have time to maybe address some suggestions. Kyle, what do you?
I love the idea of if we can do it a Friday night, Saturday.
Yeah,
think
I like that idea,
extra,
too.
extra day event is great.
And make Friday night resident only?
Yeah.
And maybe family, if they have family coming in, because that's the Thanksgiving weekend, maybe they could bring, family members included, with a cost, I would say,
Card,
because they're a guest.
card. Yep.
But Molly, what do you think?
I don't know, I keep going back and forth on it. We're having it, right, and keep going. Should we vamp it up this year with some of these ideas, or should we vamp it down? Because it might be vamped down a little bit going forward, because we're not, maybe not have the space, or, I don't know, so I'm kind of just going back and forth on that.
Well, it's true. I mean, we don't know absolutely for sure what's going to happen with Paradise Park. I guess I've been inclined to maybe, especially coming out of COVID with everything that's happened, I'd be inclined to maybe vamp it up a little bit, and kind of along the lines of what you guys are saying, and see if we have time to maybe bring in some things like, because I know one year we had somebody come in and they had like goats and they had
It was in the
rabbits. And
back
I think
grass
we
area.
even had pony rides one year. So, and I think the Friday night, as I already said, Friday night for residents, Saturday for the traditional format, I think that would work. So you said Greg's working on this, and he's gonna get some cost for us? Okay, all right, that's.
I would not be opposed to allowing people come in Friday that were not residents, as long as we were charging a number.
Well, I think the idea, I guess the reason I like residents only, because when we allow the non-residents, it is crowded, and people have the long waits.
We should charge more.
So Friday night, you could say, hey, this is for residents, you get the shorter lines, it's people like that nighttime, I think, carnival atmosphere. And I think Friday and Saturday, we do charge more. I mean, I think last year we paid $10, it was $10, charged $20.
So Friday night's basically like a Tequesta VIP night.
Yeah,
Tequesta
yeah,
residents.
if you're a resident, you're a VIP, and you get to come.
Gotcha.
I kinda like that.
I mean, what would the Friday night window even be? It'd be at night. Please, chief.
Well, again-
We'll let Greg play with that.
Yeah.
Greg will
Let Greg
do
do
well. He's,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, he does events and he'll be all right.
okay. All right. Anything else on this, Jeremy, you wanted to touch on?
No, sir.
All right, has anybody got any other items they'd like to touch on tonight?
Maybe I could do a moment of,
I'll just say one thing. I went to Wine Proxy this weekend. Great little event, great little place. I was surprised that they used to have an oven in there, and they used to cook meals in there, but they were forced to remove that oven for whatever reason, because they couldn't get their permitting because of something. They needed some type of a
They probably
wine
needed some type
proxy.
of-
Sorry.
They probably needed a hood.
They have a hood.
Oh, they have a
It was
hood.
something else that Loxahatchee River was going to require them to have.
Like grease trap?
I think that's it. Yeah, grease
Yeah,
trap.
they have grease traps too.
And so they're not cooking, they're not a restaurant, they're not, and so that's kind of they're just doing might have a chef come in every now and then. So looking at it from a conceptual of reality of what they're doing, I don't know. To me, I was surprised they can't do that.
Yeah, to the manager's point, I do know normally when you're cooking food, you've got to have the hood and you've got to have the grease trap. I guess we could look and see if there's,
We'll take a look at it, and we'll see if there's some way we can get them what they need.
Yeah, because they're not cooking dinners for everybody.
Can't guarantee anything, but
Yeah.
we'll take a look.
yeah. The only thing I had is Molly and I were both on the North Palm Beach County Intergovernmental Affairs Committee conversation on Friday, and of course they asked for updates on what's going on within each of the municipalities, so I gave them a quick update on Tequesta. We talked about the community center, EAC again, the ramp up on our infrastructure projects, Sea Glass, a couple of other items. The primary presentation they made that was on hurricane preparedness. You know, they're really pushing, and all the local municipalities really getting out there, making their residents aware, you know, just in case we did get hit with a major storm. They've got their website up. I know we've got stuff on our website, but we can patch in and I think access some of their material as well. But it was a pretty good presentation, and the woman who did it, if we want her to come here to do a presentation, I believe that she would probably do that for us. So that's something to think about. The other thing they mentioned that might be of some interest is Riviera Beach is working to launch a new building that will jumpstart what they hope will be the waterfront redevelopment. It's a 20-story building. They showed the design. It's actually a beautiful design. It's REG is the architect, same people that are doing the community center for us. So they don't have it approved yet, but they're going to their council. I think I believe, did they say it's already been through planning and zoning? I don't recall.
Can't remember.
Who's doing it?
But anyways, you know, it looks like a pretty great project, and I think, you know, if they're able to move this forward, I think it will help Riviera Beach eventually. They're also building, or looking to build a brand-new town center in terms of Village Hall public safety, and I think that's already underway. So, you know, they're really trying to spearhead some redevelopment of that community and create opportunities down there, which I think will be a good thing for Palm Beach County overall. So, that's all I have. So, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'd like to just say one quick thing.
Yes.
While we all know that the Surfside tragedy is very far south of us.
And I apologize, I forgot to do that.
It's okay. Just as a Florida community, I think we all have them in our thoughts and prayers. We wish them all well, as best as they can. And we'll just keep an eye on them. And I do want our residents to know that all your elected officials are following that and keeping a close eye on it. So may God be with them.
Yeah, thank you, Lori. Did I get a second?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.